Welcome back to HQ. Here are the notable games in the late afternoon window. Tennessee taking on Pittsburgh. That is one of the 3 ranked games this week in terms of the top 25 ranked on ranked. You have Tennessee as the favorites. Their first ever meeting in Pittsburgh. Panthers lead the series 3-0. Mountaineers coming off that wild 63-61 loss last week to North Carolina in a game that saw 60 points scored in the fourth quarter alone. They take on Texas A&M this week as big underdogs. Cougars won a 3 OT thriller over UTSA in their opener. They're looking to start 2-0 for the first time since 2018. And on CBS at 3:30 Eastern, it's Colorado taking on Air Force. Air Force sitting there as 17.5-point favorites. Two-time Super Bowl champion Brian McFadden is here with Tom Fornelli and the Wizard of Odds, Kenny White, to give us some wagering insight into these top 25 games. Let's talk about Tennessee-Pitt. Volunteers, 6-point favorites on the road. With the total set over 60, Tennessee have scored 45-plus points in 4 straight games. If they do it in 5, it'll be a new school record. Do you think they get close to that here, BMAC?
No, I don't think so. I love this defense from Pitt, especially playing at home. They play with a lot of energy. I think they're going to do some things to try to slow down Hendon Hooker and his crew. But Tennessee will have success. But when you look at the betting angle with this particular matchup, guys, I like the total. Now, last year when these two teams faced off in Knoxville, they scored 75 points. It was an explosion of points coming from both sides. I don't expect to see that in today's matchup, and here's why. If you look at Pitt's offense, when we saw week 1 against West Virginia, they love to try to run the football. That's their mindset. That's the motto. Establish the running game and then throw based on the running game. They will continue to do so. And when you're running the football like that, especially in college football, the clock is running. And then when you look at the offensive side of things with Tennessee, I think we will see some issues coming from Pitt's defense. So do I expect to see 75 points? No. Do I expect to see 65 points? No, sir. So because of all of that, I love the total, and I'm taking the under.
I'm going to take the points with Pittsburgh here. And, teams improved so much from week 1 to week 2. We saw Louisville last night look horrible again in week 1 against Syracuse and came back and they win straight up against Central Florida on the road. Pittsburgh plays their biggest rival in week 1 in West Virginia. And West Virginia really, really surprised me because they had a lot more team speed than I thought. They played a very good game against Pittsburgh, and they always will because it's the backyard brawl. So that game I kind of throw out. Pittsburgh, I think, is a little underrated going into this game. Being an underdog at home, this is a solid Pittsburgh team. Well, I said before the beginning of the year, they have enough talent on both sides of the football with Keaton Slovis now as the quarterback to win the ACC. I think they're that good. I think they're a top 15 team. I think Tennessee is also a team that ranks in the top 15. But I thought this game should have been priced more Pittsburgh a slight favorite because of the revenge factor that Tennessee does have. But I tell you what, Pittsburgh being a home dog, I think there's a lot of value there.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, Kenny. I mean, it's not a set rule, but I do not like betting favorites with bad defenses. And I hate betting favorites with bad defenses when they're road favorites, which is the case here with Tennessee. This is a team that is going to put points on the board. Josh Heupel is a tremendous offensive coordinator. He puts together a tremendous script, and the Volunteers with quarterback and Hendon Hooker are going to have success against the Panthers in this spot. The problem is this is also a Tennessee team that went 7-6 last season despite scoring 39 points per game. So that should tell you about how well that defense has performed on a weekly basis. And last week, the defense played well against Ball State. It got an interception on the very first play of the game. Things kind of snowballed from there. Pitt's a completely different animal than that Ball State team that they played last week. I'm with you, Kenny. I don't think Pitt should be this big of an underdog at home against the Vols if it should be an underdog to begin with. So I'm going to take the Panthers and the points. And honestly, I would consider a money line sprinkle on the Panthers as well.
Yeah, one quick ATS stat that I played as well. The first half, Pat Narduzzi, 39-24 ATS in the first half of games. So look for Pittsburgh to be ahead at halftime.
All right, game coming up at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, let's talk about App State as they go to take on Texas A&M, the number 6 Aggies, 18.5-point favorites. They did the business versus Sam Houston last week. App State almost did it versus North Carolina. Kenny, how do you feel about this line?
Yeah, I think the number's just right. Tough to tell. A&M has Miami on deck, and maybe they could be looking a little bit ahead to that one. I'm going to go over the total here. App State showed last week for against North Carolina. They can move the football. Chase Bryce is a solid quarterback. He's been at Clemson, and I believe it was Duke that he was at before. Threw for 6 touchdowns in that game against North Carolina. Haynes King looked great against Sam Houston. 364 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. He did throw 2 picks, and that kind of caused a little bit of slowdown in the offense, or they would have had more than 31 points against Sam Houston. They're going to have to keep up a little bit today because App State and Sean Clark, they're going to keep the pedal to the metal, and they're going to try to put points on the board here today.
Going in a little bit of an opposite direction for you, Kenny. I don't trust Texas A&M in this spot simply because, like you mentioned, they've got Miami looming on deck next week, so it's possible we're not going to see the entire deck of cards from the Aggies on offense. And also, Haynes King, in the limited time we've seen him at quarterback, has had problems with turnovers, and that makes me scary of trusting the Aggies to cover the spread. But what I don't have any problems trusting is the Texas A&M defense. And while that App State offense moved the ball at will against North Carolina last week, so did Florida A&M the week before, and Jackson State held Florida A&M to 3 points last week. Frankly, the 4 of us could go out there and probably move the ball a little bit against that North Carolina defense. I don't think that's going to be the case against this Aggies defensive front. I think they're much better than North Carolina in that department. I think they're better than North Carolina in the secondary as well. So I don't think the Mountaineers are going to get embarrassed in any sense. They're too good of a team for that to happen to. But I don't think they're going to have too much success putting points on the board. So I am taking the Appalachian State team total under 17.5.
I like that. I like that. You taking the Apps team total. I'm taking A&M lane 18.5. What you talked about, Tom, especially the battle in the trenches, Texas A&M has a huge advantage over App State. They've done a phenomenal job getting some big-time players to play in the trenches with their hand in the dirt and be disruptive. And the same can be said on the offensive end as well. So I expect to see a better, more efficient game from Haynes King. And I think this team is going to put up points. And they're not going to overlook App State because they have Miami next week, but they understand how important it is to take care of their business and then get ready and dialed in for next week's ball game. So seeing this line, to some, it seems to be a bit large, but I'm not afraid of Vegas right now. I'm going to take the over. I believe in Jimbo Fisher with his glasses on his nose, and I think Haynes King is going to do some big-time things today. And in that defense, I trust. Give me the Aggies lane 18.5.
All right, let's finish off with 25 Houston at Texas Tech. The Red Raiders sitting as 4-point favorites, a total at 62 and a hook. The Red Raiders have won 4 straight in this series, 9 of 10 since 1991. Tom, Red Raiders without their starting quarterback, though, Tyler Shuck out for a couple of weeks, but they're used to that. Donovan Smith is going to start again. Do you still like them in this spot?
I like the Cougars, although it's not because of the quarterback situation, because, honestly, I think Donovan Smith might be better than Tyler Shuck. So it could be bad news for the Cougars that Shuck is out and they have to face Donovan Smith. But I just think Houston is a team that is probably going to prove to be one of the better teams in the group of 5 this year. I know Cincinnati made the playoff last season. It is considered the favorite in the American. I think Houston's going to prove to be the better team in that conference this year, and I think going on the road here in this spot against Texas Tech, I can't guarantee that they're going to win. I think this game could look kind of a lot like what we saw with Houston and UTSA last week, back and forth, thrilling, possibly get to overtime. But I think that this is a Cougars team that defensively, up front, they lost Logan Hall to the NFL last year, and he was just a clog in the middle of that defensive line. But they still have some other solid players on the edges and at linebacker, and I think they are going to give Texas Tech some trouble up front. I think it's going to be a higher scoring game. I think it's going to be close, kind of back and forth. So if I'm getting this many points with the Cougars, I'm going to take them and hope for the best.
I like the Red Raiders at home. I think that's a huge advantage for them, laying 4 points. I don't trust the Cougars' defense. We saw some issues last week against UTSA, and talk about a triple overtime victory. They needed everything plus more to be able to come up victorious last week. This is a tall task based on what they had last week, and they struggled. So I expect to see some of those same struggles. Give me the Red Raiders at home. I think it's going to be a phenomenal atmosphere there, and I think they're going to take advantage of that said atmosphere and take advantage and take care of business against the Cougars.
I'm going to trust my power ratings on this. And last week, VMAC, I had Texas San Antonio against Houston. It's a very good football team and cashed my ticket on that. But my numbers are telling me Houston should be a slight favorite here in this game. Clayton Tune, the quarterback, outstanding. There is a slight drop-off at quarterback. I've got a 2-point drop-off from Schaff down to Donovan Smith. And Smith didn't even play quarterback in high school at Bishop Gorman. Played wide receiver because they had 2 guys in front of him. all those years. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I think his junior and senior year, was the starting quarterback there. Joey McGuire is the head coach at Texas Tech. Never was an offensive coordinator in college. He was a head coach in high school for 13 years. But he's up against Dana Holgorsen, who was 61-41 at West Virginia. He started out with 2 losing seasons at Houston, and they won 10 games last year. Returns a lot of talent from that team. And I think he's the better coach. I think it's a coaching mismatch here. I'm going to take Houston.
Stellar insight and guidance from our guys, Kenny White, Tom Fornelli, and Bryant McFadden. Great stuff, gentlemen. Let's recap their picks as we take a look at that late afternoon slate. In terms of Tennessee, Pittsburgh, Tennessee favorites in that game, but Tom and Kenny going with Pittsburgh. BMAC likes the under there. In terms of Texas A&M, taking on App State. Tom likes App State and the team total 17.5. Kenny's going with the over. BMAC likes A&M plus the points. Likes Texas Tech in that game versus Houston, but our other two guys, Tom and Kenny, going with Houston as 4-point underdogs.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.